All right, so moving on, I think now we're going to talk. I want to talk a little bit with you as far as just the NFL and kind of your thoughts on um, your thoughts on the game as it is right now and several of the different positions you've played. Obviously, you have talked a lot about kind of your investment in the position of tight end. Um, Overall, throughout history, I mean, the tight end position, in my opinion, has one of the better evolutions. I mean, we're talking about a position that, in the 40s and the 50s was basically just an extra sixth blocker. And
Mm,
now we're talking about a guy like Travis Kelce, who is basically a slot receiver, or guys who pretty much line up as outside receivers. What for you as a tight end, a former tight end? What do you think is the most exciting part about the future of the tight end position, and what do you think was the most exciting part of how the tight end positions evolved as you have seen it?
How I've seen it evolve, um, there's a lot less blocking. It's, even in the NFL, that's what I'm
Right.
most excited about seeing. There's more receiving. You're not really watching football just to have three guys running around the field and the extra fourth be on the line for extra protection. I feel like it's evolved more because the game is more than just running the ball now. To beat teams, you have to be able to run and throw. If you're just good at one, that's pretty much like a one trick pony. The team's going to know how to stop you, shut you down from there. So for a team to pass the ball, especially to a tight end, means a lot because they evolve from being just a blocker to the second receiver, third receiver, right?
Right.
Spread sets, because that's what teams run majority now. Tight ends aren't even in a 3 point stance with their hand, and they're split out in the slot or even out wide if you feel that confident in your matchup with the guy who's guarding him. And it just brings a smile to my face because I could say I lived through that kind of history because,
Hmm.
like I said, head coach change and everything. I ran pretty much every formation of offense. Freshman year, wing tee, senior year, we ended in spread. I could say it was like evolutionary change for me because over the years and over the changes of our offense and how different formations came about, I got more and more love. When I say more and more love, you get the ball. If you don't block, you don't play. And I
Right.
was
Yeah.
blocking. So they started to feed me more, and I saw what it was like to be other than just the six man on the line.
Absolutely. I think one thing that I've noticed as, a viewer of the NFL, especially with the previous draft, which I had talked about in length on the channel, um, I think with this specific draft class, we're seeing an overall diversification of what the tight end position can be. I mean, we're talking about a guy like Tyler Warren, who came from Penn State, and this is a guy who played pretty much all five positions on the offensive line. He played snaps as a quarterback, a running back, a halfback, which, in the past was pretty much a dead position in the NFL. See it more in the college games, and the fullback, which is slowly a dying um, position, which I think with a guy like Tyler Warren can kind of be rejuvenated as a position. And then you see him on different types of formations, whether that's the spread or the overall I formation, and how he can kind of move and manipulate an opposing defense, being able to play in motion or being able to play in the slot or as an X or Z receiver. He can run so many different routes. And I think from that standpoint, the tight end position is definitely changing into more of a Swiss Army knife. Um, but that does bring me to the question. I think tight ends in general, especially for what they value. I mean, I look at some of the last few teams to win a Super Bowl, pretty much since the 1990s. Um, every dynasty or every elite team has had some sort of tight end that either is very valuable to their team, even if it's like a Ben Watson for the Patriots, or it's an elite tight end, whether that's the Gronks or the Travis Kelce's of the world. Um, and yet still somehow they are very much underpaid for what the value that they bring. Um, do you think that that could change with the overall kind of versatility that the tight ends are going to bring in the future, or do you think that's going to stay the same given the fact that there are still more Swiss Army knives?
I feel that yes, it will bring way more versatility, and I feel like if we're talking about pay, they should be paid more.
Hmm.
One, because you're playing a skill like a mid skill slash skill position but you also have to know run scheme, run block. You're a lineman that catches the ball. You have to do more than the average receiver, than the average lineman. That's why I see it as you're the second quarterback because you also have to know your assignment, the man next to you's assignment, how everything's supposed to move in order for actual play to function and come together for the team to succeed.
Right.
And if that one thing goes wrong, or in our offense, I was held accountable because I was like our quarterback's second pair of eyes. So if something was wrong, I had to jump on it, get it right, fix
Right.
it. Everything else could look right. And
Um,
that's the
go ahead.
same for what the next level.
Yeah, yeah, you were saying, sorry, I might have cut you off.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
Did you you were saying something else. I might have cut you off.
Yeah, as far as the next level, because it's more intricate. In high school, they teach us like the basics. You get into college, that's a whole nother game, whole nother pace, whole nother tempo. You're going against bigger guys who are bigger than the average high schooler. And even in the NFL, it's bigger guys,
Right.
weight programs, lifting more, moving faster. It's just a game of tempo, and you have to know how to move in it. And with tight end, I feel like it is hard, but if you're built for it, you can do it.
I'm asking you this LSU alum to LSU alum. Um, Obviously, we had one of the better tight ends in college football this past year in Mason Taylor. Um, I guess this is triple part question, but um, was there anything that you took off of Mason Taylor's game when you were playing tight end or even now? What was your overall opinion on him? And then I guess also, what is your forecast of what he might look like as far as a scheme now at the next level? Now that he's playing with the New York Jets.
Man, Mason Taylor is, in my eyes, a very good tight end because he's one physical at the point of attack. He's not afraid to put his face mask and the man in front of him and drive them for however long he needs them to. And he's also a passing threat. He wasn't really a first read guy that you'd want the ball to go through off like pre snap. But as the QB would go through his progressions and look at each man, Taylor would always find himself to be open to get the ball and make something happen with it. So I really saw a lot of good flashes in his game, and I feel like he's going to project it a lot, especially in the Jets offense, because they just picked up what Justin Fields. They have Garrett Wilson, and with those tools around him to give him more knowledge as far as in the passing game, not as much as the blocking tight end game. I feel like it's going to elevate his game because he's with some elite guys that could help him be elite himself.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking about a tight end who is a very fast tight end on top of that, a 4.65 tight end. We're talking about him playing in an offense that has one of the fastest, if not the fastest, quarterbacks in the league. Garrett Wilson is a very fast receiver himself, and their offensive coordinator, and their new one, is Tanner Engstrand, who came from the Detroit Lions. We obviously know how they used Sam Laporta so well. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mason Taylor, I looked at him when I was watching him as a guy who just pretty much was, Garrett Nussmeier, even Jaden Daniels, safety blanket. I think the big thing with him is just kind of how he adapts in the run game. Obviously, when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields that can, have a little bit of trouble given the fact that he likes to run the ball more. What do you forecast as far as overall just how he can develop as a run blocker?
How he can develop as a run blocker, in my
Or
opinion,
I'll make it even better. Since you're from a coach's standpoint, let's look at it from there. What would you do as a coach if you were Mason Taylor's coach to kind of uh, help him develop further?
I mean, really just continue to do what he's doing. Being physical, like I said, he's a really good blocker in the run game, even to be a six man on the block if they need extra protection up front in the pass game. So it's taking them out, just keeping the other three in. Um, if he just continues to keep that physicality on the NFL level, I'd say because his dad was also in the NFL, so
Right.
it's grit by grit, generation after generation. Uh, his growth area, I could say, really isn't in his blocking game. I feel like he has it down packed, if I'm being completely honest. He's a solid guy, good frame. What is he, about 6'4", 200 plus pounds, who could really move the man in front of him with no problem. If you send him at a man, I feel like it's going to get handled.
Right. And Mason Taylor, yes, he's 6. He is 6'5", 251 pounds, and moving 465 at that size.
Well, I'm lying. One thing he can improve on is,
But yeah, go ahead, KT.
like I was saying, I double back a little bit. Just a couple things I would improve is just his pad level and hand placement. When he comes off the ball, he comes off a bit too high. And at the point of contact, if you're on the line going against a defender that's dead in front of you, less than 3 inches away from you, the point of contact is, from what I was taught, face mask in the chest, or just about under where your chin strap is, and hands inside the pad placement, like you're putting your hands in their armpit. And in film that I watched on them, like close up, because I do still find passion in the game. I do still watch certain tight ends in the game. I would see him about eye to eye with his hands on like their shoulder pad, not really more inside where other opponents can be more beat easily, making it harder for himself. But he would still get the job done surprisingly. And I guess to stay elite and keep being elite how he was in college, and to translate that into the NFL is just to watch tape on other guys who he thinks his game is like, just to see how they've progressed and how it paid off for them, and how they've kept some things and forgot some things. I wouldn't say more forgot, but they gained more knowledge and took on more things, and they let go of old habits that really wasn't doing better for them as they progressed and got better and got into higher places.
Right, right. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, for a guy like Mason Taylor, I think a offensive coordinator like Tanner Engstrand is perfect for him. I think as far as pad level, I remember that was one of the big concerns for even a guy like Sam Laporta when he came out of Iowa, and he turned out pretty well. So I think Mason Taylor, I mean, for me, he was my number three tight end. So I'm ex incredibly high on him and his potential. But yeah, I mean, I think that this overall Jets team excites me as far as what they can do for Mason Taylor's career. On that specific note, I would ask, involving, did you follow the NFL draft? And if so, did you have like a list as far as guys you were looking at as far as tight end that you think are going to be good in the next level, maybe like a ranking?
Really, all my guys that I would watch in specific that I had put probably my most investment and time into is Tyler Warren and Elijah Arroyo.
Elijah, ooh, the guy from Miami.
Hmm. He had a lot of burn with Cam Ward, especially the number one quarterback in the draft. He was really good at getting open. He would also block. He's more of a slender, taller build and tight end. I wouldn't say he's more big in stature. I would want to say he's a more receiving tight end than he is a blocker, but if he has to block, he will get it done. I like him a lot because he's, in my eyes, that's just a really big receiver that could block well as a six-man down man. And for him to go out there like he's a regular receiver and run around DBs who are faster than him, quicker than him, and still get open and make plays for the offense really astonished me.
Well, I mean, as far as Elijah Roy goes, I think the big concern with him is, of course, staying healthy. But yeah, I mean, if he had played more, I would really very much be high on him. But yeah, this past year for a guy like Cam Ward, he was very much a safety blanket at times where Cam Ward was, in the middle of it, one of his good old playmaking rendezvous, let's call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Elijah Arroyo is a very intriguing prospect at the next level, and I'm excited to see what he ends up doing. Um, Now for the all-time worst transition in the history of sports podcasts. On that same note, we're going to talk about. I wanted to talk about a former Miami tight end with a lot of controversy surrounding him. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. A guy who we have made a few jokes on this podcast, but Mr. Aaron Hernandez. And on that same note, we're also going to talk about Rob Gronkowski. A lot of people, including myself, would argue that this is the greatest tight end duo of all time, and a tight end duo that featured 2,300 yards combined back in 2011, the sole season where they were just dominating the NFL. Um, obviously they had a huge impact on the game and how it was played as far as the way that they lined up and overall changing that in the league into more of a two tight end set and what they could do with that. Was there what would you say was the most you know uh pivotal part of their impact on the game as a specific duo when they were on the field?
As a duo, I want to say they each had their own stronghold. Aaron Hernandez was more of the receiving guy. He wasn't, in my eyes, if I was a college coach, he was not a tight end. He was just a heavier receiver standing only at like what, 6'1",
Right.
and still being able to run routes, move, get open. I saw him really as just the bigger receiver. Now Gronk, he was a really good part in this role as a blocker and in the passing game. I see him as a more developed and more complete tight end over Hernandez, just over the fact because he's bigger, weighs more, and he's built actually for the position.
Right,
Or
absolutely.
modern time, I guess back then 6'1" for tight end would slide, but in today's world, that's not cutting it.
Do you have an all-time tight end rank as far as like a top five, maybe?
Um, I have a top three.
Top three?
My top three, number one, the in my eyes, the greatest tight end of all time is Tony Gonzalez.
Hey, you're the first person that said that I agree with. Everyone else says Gronk or Kelsey.
Nah,
I've been on the record saying that Gonzalez is the number one tight end.
now I do have Kelsey at my three just because of his boom and his production. He's putting out receiver numbers. Guys
Absolutely.
had triple crown, guys who've had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, having more yards than those guys, and still being able to block and do all the other things the tight ends are capable of is really mind blowing. That's why I have him at my three, being even though he's a younger guy. And for my number two, Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates.
Yes,
Damn. So no, you don't have Gronk in your top three.
I think Travis Kelsey's better than Gronk in my opinion.
Damn. Damn. So what specifically stands out for a guy like Kelsey that you think he's better than Gronk?
His route game,
Route running.
yes, 100%. Gronk was more of goal line. If it's short down and distance, he's more of a possession guy. He's not the guy I would want to go to for a really big game. Would he pop big games though? Yes, I'm not gonna lie. I'll give him his props. He's had times where he's broke a couple of tackles and went for longer than what he was expected to go for, but for his role in an offense, he's a down and distance possession guy. That's why I have Kelsey over him because Kelsey's more of a deep threat. He startles safeties because he's able to run on their toes, get them off edge, and really make the decision on where he's going. His route
Right.
really strikes fear in a defense because they haven't seen a tight end in the game that can actually run routes, move certain ways, make certain cuts. They wouldn't even expect the tight end to run a whip route, but he does stuff like that and still makes a good gain off it. That's why I
Right.
have him over Rob Gronkowski.
100%. I mean, I get that completely. For me, I think the big reason I would still take Gronk over Kelsey is because of the blocking game. I know Kelsey has had different criticisms on his blocking game, as far as some people saying that he's not a good blocker at all. I know for someone like Chris Collinsworth, on PFF has talked several times about how Kelsey's actually underrated as a blocking. Where do you stand on kind of what Kelsey does for the Chiefs offense as a blocker?
As a blocker, if I'm being honest, he's a little bit of a prima donna. They really don't. They really don't have him involved in the block game because the game's more modernized now. They're using him as more of a receiver because hands down, he is the current best tight end in the league. So
hmm
if I had him in my offense, I'd pretty much do the same thing. But also, if it came down to it, I'd want him to be as sharp as Gronk would be, because Gronk, he's, I'd say, a more well rounded tight end in both passing and blocking. But if we're just talking about opinionated, I'd say Kelsey. But if he was to take on the role of blocking better, then I feel like he'd have more of an edge on Gronk if we're talking about better out of the two.
Right. On that same topic, well, a little bit moving away, I was gonna ask, what is your opinion on some of the older tight ends in the game and how they impacted the position? I'm talking about guys like, the Kellen Winslows, the Mike Ditkas of the world, even guys if you want to go back to even like H-backs, if we're talking about the days of the Cleveland Browns or the Green Bay Packers in the 1950s and 60s. How do you think the game has evolved there, and what do you think that they have done as far as how they impacted the modern day game?
Wow, really setting the foundation for blocking. That's really the greatest thing that I'd say older tight ends have brought to the game because as this game is progressing and even after our time as it's going to keep progressing, the kids and guys who are becoming today's faces of tight ends, they don't know what blocking is really or how to block because we're in a more modern era. Everyone's air raid offense. No one's really trying to beat a team on the floor, just pounding it run after run after run.
Right.
So being in this era, in those offensive spread air raid, like I just said, it's more of you're running routes. You're not really hands on with the five guys that are really in the trenches, snap for snap, like digging and eating with those guys
Hmm.
and really in that dirt and getting grimy. They're more of out the way and pity pat with the smaller guys, making them more soft, like not as agile, and really just softening them up. If I'm
Right,
being
absolutely. Um, on top of that, I wanted to ask about your teams. I know you are a Houston Texans slash New Orleans Saints fan, growing up in both cities. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints don't look like they're going to have a great year. Derek Carr recently retired, and they don't particularly have the greatest tight end in the world, but Juwan Johnson has had his moments. When it comes to the Houston Texans, I don't remember. Do they still have Dalton Schultz? I know that
I
they have
believe
another.
so.
I know they have another tight end, um, who, yes, they have yes, they still have Dalton Schultz, and I know they have another tight end who I'm a huge fan of. He was a very good tight end at Ohio State, and a guy who I think is going to have a bigger role for the Houston Texans as CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and the rest of that offense continue to develop in Cade Stover. What are your expectations for both your teams and their tight end spots, and just overall, even as far as what the teams look like these next few years?
Starting off, I want to start with the Saints because that's my number one.
Hmm.
Jawan Johnson. He is, I wouldn't say TE1 because he is in rotational phase with Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill is a Swiss Army knife for the
Right,
Saints.
right.
Everything, man. But he is good. I would say great, not just yet, because he has had ins and outs with injuries, staying healthy. But as far as on the field, while he is up and active, he is a really great upside on the offense because he gives, like I said, an opening to a third or fourth man because it's a spread offense. Everyone wants to run routes, air raid, kill in the air before you can kill on the ground. That's more of a last resort. And primarily in the NFL, everybody runs 11 personnel. That's when you have what, one quarterback, one running back, three receivers, and a tight end. And he fits perfectly in it because he plays the role very well. There's not too much situation where he would be in as the bigger guy to make a really good block or to set someone up in the run game. But when he's called to do his role, he plays it well. That's mostly in the past. I do say they have another rotational player other than Taysom Hill for blocking. I forgot his name. He is on the Saints, but he's more of a bigger, stocky tight end who gets it
Hmm.
down the run. And even if in pass, he'll get it done also. But that's more in short down and distance, not even in red zone, if I'm being honest. But as far as those two, Taysom and Juwan, I have high hopes for them in the upcoming season
Are you talking
because,
about Foster Moreau?
yes, Foster Moreau. Oh my goodness, you're good with this. He's more of the bigger guy, better in blocks. He does make appearances in the pass game, but is not as present as Jawan Johnson. Now for the Texans, I honestly don't know how their tight end production is going to be, even though the tight end is one of the very key pieces in the role. the more they bring in offensive weapons, more as receivers than tight ends, it really makes me question how they're going to be utilized and what they could be utilized for. So
That is true. I mean, although I would say that, I mean, a guy like Dalton Schultz, he strikes me, I mean, given the fact that D'Amico Ryans has worked with that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type system, he reminds
mm,
me that way of a lot what how the Niners use George Kittle.
mhm,
In the same way, Cade Stovers is a little bit interesting to me because he's not a tight end who I look at and say, you know, he puts out a lot of separation on tape, but he's got great hands. He's a great blocker. So I'm intrigued by what they do that way.
100%.
On the same topic, there is an well, I mean, I was going to mention when you were talking about the Saints, there is one other tight end that I really like, Dallin Holker. Now, some people, when I've talked in Louisiana, think I'm crazy because I've hyped this guy up like he's the second coming of Jesus, or something like that. I actually have a friend whose sister was classmates with him. But yeah, I mean, I genuinely think that he is going to be one of the best tight ends in the league in a few years. I think he's a little bit raw. But he was my number, if I'm not mistaken, either my number one or number two tight end in the 2024 class. Um, do you have any thoughts on Dallin Hoker or?
I feel that he's still up and coming. I
Mhm.
mean, he really didn't do a crazy bit for us when he played in his 12 games, only having like 20, 30 receiving yards. That's only off 3 receptions, though. So I guess he's made the most of what he could with the amount of targets he's had.
Right.
But I feel like his upside is still on the come up.
For sure. I agree with that. Um, moving on, I think hold.